Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast, interview your ideal clients, and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to another episode of B2B Growth. This is the Category Creation Series, and I'm joined today by John Ruggi, VP of Marketing at Skyfi. John, how you doing today, my man?
Doing great, James. How about yourself?
I'm fantastic. So, John, really excited to dive into today's topic. This is an idea that you came up with that I thought was brilliant. We're going to be talking about 3 reasons why your company should not create a category. I'm so glad you brought this up because this is not for everyone. Talk to us at a high level why you wanted to do this, and then we're going to dive into those 3 things.
Sure. So the reason this came up for me is I was talking to a few people this week about the idea of category creation. And I think some people got the impression that it's kind of this trick that you can apply to any company. And that's not really the case. There's times when category creation absolutely makes sense. And there's other times when other strategies are going to be much more appropriate. So I just wanted to kind of dispel some of those misconceptions today and share a few reasons why or why not a category isn't a good idea.
Yeah. So this first reason that we're going to talk about, John, you say that a company should not create a category if they aren't innovating. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So most companies like to say that they're innovating, right? And they probably are to a certain extent. But what I really mean is that if you're just innovating on like features or incremental improvements, that's not really a new category. You need to be innovating in terms of bringing new ideas or concepts together, or maybe innovating in the way that something is distributed or even priced or delivered to the market. Of course, technological innovations, don't get me wrong, they are certainly fair game for category creation, but it needs to be in a very meaningful, kind of fundamental way for a category to really make sense.
I love that. The second reason that you say a company should not create a category is if they're not prepared for a long-term investment. Talk to us about this reason.
So naming a category, while it's difficult enough on its own, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. So just because you've come up with a name and you make the claim that this is some category that you are now leading, that doesn't really do anything for the market. Owning a category comes through a long series of words and actions that your company does to associate itself with that category and as leaders of that category. So if you have this idea that you can just come up with a name and then put it on your website and you're done, that's really not sufficient. You need to be able to prepare to, like, whether that's through events, whether that's through your blog, whether that's an interview series, a podcast, it's a term that you have to really espouse and evangelize in the marketplace.
Yeah, I know that you and I have talked about this one a ton, that people are going to associate. It comes so much more, people can get tripped up over the name, and it can be really difficult to land on a name and to get buy-in from your entire team on what the name is going to be. But the reality is it's much more impactful what you do with that name over the long haul, the content you create around it, the initiatives and the campaigns that you build around it. And so it is so much more than just coming up with a name and coming up with a definition. It is a long haul investment. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. The third reason that a company should not create a category, you say, John, is if you can't make an argument that other companies will actually participate in the category. This is something that I'm very passionate about. Well, the category has to be bigger than just yourself. It cannot be a category of one, a category of just your company. Talk to us about this one.
Yeah. So this is probably the trickiest of the three in some ways, because it involves a little bit of forecasting in terms of how you think the market's going to play out and to what extent other companies are going to try to mimic or play alongside you. And so when you come up with a category name, or you're trying to go through that exercise, if what you come up with is so esoteric that you can't envision other companies really trying to get there, you're kind of just an odd duck. And that doesn't really count as a category. I guess the exception might be if you think you can build a monopoly on something, but there's a lot of reasons why that's really not practical that we don't need to go into. So I think maybe the best litmus test I heard for this is if you can imagine people having that category name in their job title, then that's a good sign that this is something bigger than your own company. And if you've got competition, that validates the category. So you want other people to espouse and evangelize for the category itself. But again, if you're just the only one out there, it's what you define is so specific. That's not really a category. That's just a really unique way you've maybe positioned yourself. But that's kind of a different strategy.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the job title. That's actually, I'm in the process of writing a book around our category. And as I was talking to my ghostwriter about some of the goals for the book, one of the goals is that I would love to create a category that, in 5 years from now, I'm seeing people hire roles for content-based networking and actually have content-based networking in their title, similar to what we're starting to see with ABM. People are starting to get hired into ABM, account-based marketing specific roles. And so when you think about this, with ABM, there are a lot of different vendors in the ABM space. There are specific job titles focused on ABM. So start to look at some other categories and see how the ecosystem that has been built out for that category is much bigger than just the company that started it. So ABM is much bigger than Terminus. For the longest time, Terminus has now evolved their product to be a more comprehensive ABM solution. But at first, it was really just advertising. It was targeted advertising to your target accounts for a long time, until I think this year they actually developed much more of a platform. Their product Terminus evolved over the years, but I think you're spot on there that to create a category, you truly have to create an ecosystem, an environment where competitors will want to be a part of that category as well. Other, your peers, other vendors, people will be hiring for this role. So this one is super, super important. John, is there anything else that you want to share before we kind of tie this episode up with a bow?
I'll just end by saying, category creation, it's one of the most powerful things you can do to define yourself in the market. And as we talked about earlier, research shows that companies that can create a category ownership position tend to get the lion's share of revenue and profits. That being said, just remember it can be right for you, but if you're in a position where it doesn't apply, there's other strategies. And I think in a future episode, we'll talk about the difference between category and positioning. Those are kind of cousins that relate to each other and kind of complement each other in some ways. So let's keep that in mind for a future talk.
Yeah, definitely. We'll write it down. Awesome, man. All right. So if you're not already connected with John on LinkedIn, make sure to do that. John Rougeux, Rougeux. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate your attention.
Digital marketing agencies have a tough job. You have to stay on top of the latest marketing strategies for your clients and your agency. What if there was a way you could address both at the same time? Imagine your agency putting out content with greater quality and quantity. Envision bringing your clients a turnkey solution for one of B2B marketing's fastest growing media strategies, podcasting. All those clients asking for your help with their account-based marketing efforts? Picture being the first to bring them the idea of content-based networking, showing them the proven strategy for breaking into their most coveted accounts. Here's the concept. Sweetfish Media is looking to work with a limited number of innovative agencies interested in a new partnership model. We produce a podcast for your agency at no cost. You introduce the power of podcasting and Sweetfish services to your clients. Everybody wins. Learn more at sweetfishpartners.com.